You have a paper there, this -8-4. So what we're going to do here, instead of talk about these individual holes as we did in the first class last week on board position, hole 17, so on down the board, we're going to talk about, does everybody know when we talk about 1st Street, 2nd Street, 3rd Street, and 4th Street, what we're talking about on the cribbage board? The first 30 holes, 1st Street, 31 to the end of the board on these tournament boards, 2nd Street. 61 to, is that 80? 90 on the nose. 61 to 90, 3rd Street. 90 to the end, 4th Street. What we want to do here then, we want to set us up the critical position zone, and we want to concentrate on getting as deep in that zone as we can when we're on those individual streets. Now, this is always one of the problems in understanding the theory of 26, is your position on the board actually needs to be gauged in relationship to where your opponent is on the board. And sometimes it may not be necessary for you to be anywhere near 26 or 17 or whatever the hole is. But if you're dealing on 1st Street, that ought to be your goal. So if you're not dealing on the opening hand, ideally, get in that zone before your opponent gets there and have the deal. Look over the board, do some pegging if you need to. If you're setting at hole, say you didn't get the opening deal and you're sitting at hole 10, and you know you need 17 as a minimum, and you only got a 4-point hand, then go for some pegs. Don't be in the dumps over the hand. You might accidentally enter in this zone. And if you're dealing from these as you go around the board and your opponent is not too far ahead of you, if your opponent's 25 points ahead of you, then it doesn't do you too much good to be dealing here, does it? But if your opponent is anywhere near you on the board, you have a distinct advantage if you're dealing in this little zone here on 1st Street. And that's where I need to be on 2nd Street. Now these holes here are exactly the same holes as you'll find in DeLynn Culver's theory of 26. 17, see there's 26 difference, 26, 26. Okay, 43, 69. The only thing is, we want to try to get deeper into this zone earlier in the game. You see, what happens so often, I'm sure you'll all experience it, we end up with minimum position on 4th Street. I'm dealing from hole 95. Well, according to the theory, I should win a game. I'm dealing from 95. You know, it's not much better than 50%. It's about a 50-50 deal if you're hole 95. But if you're 99, it's about an 85%. So, as we move along, we want to try to move deeper into these zones when we have the deal.
Russ, on those streets, are you saying that, so that would be your first deal, then your second deal, your third deal, and your fourth deal?
I'm saying when you got that crib, whether you had, if you had, say you didn't get the opening cut, when you deal ideally, when you deal in an ideal situation, you ought to be a minimum of 17. So if you got a 12 hand, you're not going to be smug about it and play it safe. You're going to go after pigs. Whereas I see most people, when they get a 12 hand, they play defensively. See? Because they got in their mind that they're only supposed to have 9. So I got 12, so I just play this safe. Now how that changes the play, here's a good example. You go to 9, with 3 threes. Most people would lead the 3. But you need quite a little boost to get into this zone. Lead the 9. Get a count of 19, play one of the 3s for 22. You might be amazed. Your opponent might not have put a 3 on your 9 lead. And they might only have a double run of face cards. So by playing offensively, you've created a situation that benefits you for pegging. If you play the 3, it's safe. But you would see, we'll get into some actual game situations, but keep these in mind. They're just 5 holes, 17 to 21, 43 to 47, 69 to 73, 95 to 99. And the only key to it is just watching where your opponent is. But if you're dealing, if you've got the deck and you're dealing in these positions, you're well on to winning a game if your opponent is anywhere near you on the board. Here's what I was mentioning. That's about the percentage. Each of those holes adds about 10 points to your winning percentage in this 4th Street zone. So if you've got a chance, you can do some of that earlier rather than wait till you're on 4th Street. Yeah.
Given the dealing situation, to feel like you're in a good position, how many points in back of your lead peg should the opponent be?
What was it again?
In any position on the board, pretty much. If you're in the dealing, if you're having the deal, especially toward the end of the game, how far back would your opponent need to be when you feel confident in playing defensively?
Well, the question is, at what point should I feel comfortable with my opponent being back of me in the game? There's this place where I should be comfortable. The answer to that question has a lot to do with how you play the game. See, I don't know what kind of a defensive player you are. If your opponent is well behind you, you need to be protecting your advantage. See? And so I feel very good if my opponent is 15 to 18 points behind me. I feel that the game is pretty competitive if they're 5 to 11 or 12. But that's kind of where I am with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean if you have a good knowledge of the defensive discards and you make the wise plays to avoid getting pegged on, then a 15 to 18 point advantage is a pretty major advantage in a game. And many times that kind of advantage will exist throughout the entire game if you are protecting your advantage. Now, there are folks, and I can't tell you whether they're wrong, once in a while they turn in a spectacular card, that figure if they're 15 or 18 points ahead, that's the time to get reckless. That go for skunks. When you're getting that kind of a lead, go for skunks. Well, I find that I get more skunks by playing defensively than I do by getting reckless. Okay? So that kind of beats around your question, but I think it's an individual thing. That you need to have a pretty good feeling for your game. Do you have some good defensive skills to protect an advantage? Or are you the kind of a player that just goes all out offense? There's some people that do. And sometimes it works for them. I think it's important to balance the play. And basically that comes down to if I've got a lead that I like, protect it, play defensively. And I play very offensively, probably more than Todd does. Certainly a lot more so than Paul Hatcher if I'm behind. I think when I'm behind, I decide I better do something about this right now, and I'm gonna start taking some chances.